Being that it's 7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Michelle, can you please read the sunshine law?
Let the minutes show that adequate notice of this meeting as required by Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, has been provided by the annual notice, which has been posted on the bulletin boards filed with the Borough Clerk and has been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Star Ledger, and the Two River Times.
Thank you. Can we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Sheridan.
Here.
Councilmember Cooper.
Here.
Councilmember Good.
Here.
Councilmember Pacheco. Here. Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott. Here. Mayor Kennedy.
Here. If everyone could please silence their cell phone as courtesy to those around them. If we could please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We're going to read a proclamation during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas, while considerable progress has been made in the fight against breast cancer, it remains the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of death among women in the United States. And whereas every 2 minutes, one case of breast cancer is diagnosed in the United States. And whereas in 2019, more than 268,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in women, and more than 2,600 cases in men in the United States. And whereas improvements in early detection and treatment led to a 40% decline in breast cancer deaths in the United States between 1989 and 2016. And whereas October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to increase awareness about the disease. And whereas this October we recognize breast cancer survivors, those battling the disease, their families and friends who are a tireless source of love and encouragement, and applaud the efforts of our medical professions and researchers working to find a cure for this deadly disease. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education and regular screening. Now therefore be it proclaimed that we at the Borough of Keyport do hereby recognize October 2019 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we can all observe it to the attention of our citizens. I'd also like to take a moment to express that I think we have an extremely hard-working day here, and members, employees within our borough. Sometimes we don't always all see this eye to eye, but we are one close family, and when something impacts one of us, it impacts all of us. So, with that said, we are continually in awe of our administrator's wife's efforts to continually battle her breast cancer diagnosis. So a donation has been made by the Mayor and Council of Keyport to the American Breast Cancer Foundation. Next, we will move on to the administrator's report.
Good evening, Mayor and council members on the dais and citizens here in the chamber. I'll briefly synopsize some of the activities we've been involved in and update a few things since our last meeting, and then I'll answer any questions that you may have. Since our last meeting, I met with our planners regarding 75 Manchester. We had interviews for deputy court administrator candidates. I participated in a hurricane prep meeting along with Councilman Sheridan and the local emergency planning commission. Met with representatives of AXA Advisors. We held a logistics meeting for the Keyport Fest 5K, which went off very well. Had a meeting with Sal Costanza of Local 68. I met with Sophia Lamberson. I had a meeting regarding 75 Manchester with our planners. We attended, along with Mayor Kennedy and Councilmember McDermott, the annual Complete Street Summit. Very interesting and informative day, a lot of information. I attended the Governor's Shared Services Symposium at Monmouth University. I met with developer Len Rubenstein. I met with Jeff Bueller of the New Jersey Neighborhood Preservation Program. I met with the proposal evaluation team at the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. Those are the folks who are funding our Complete Streets study and implementation project. I held a logistics meeting for the Keyport Music Festival with all the principals involved. Had a meeting with Tom Gallo and Bob Kutchman about borough cleanliness and DPW cooperation. Met with Captain Vic from the Keyport Princess. Had a meeting with Mike Lane, and also participated in a SAGE webinar where we discussed, where we learned about how to use the state's awful grants administration system.
Is that what that stands for?
SAGE, yeah.
State's awful.
Yeah. A system to administer grants.
No, I knew that, but you made a new acronym out of that,
It's the
though.
worst.
You're like, the
It's the worst.
state's awful grant.
Perry Street Water Treatment Plant continues on schedule. They should be ready for test startup in November. We have successfully updated our section of the FEMA multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan to include identified priorities, and it's significantly increased in the number of projects that we'd like to consider. In order for any initiative to receive grant funding from FEMA under the hazard mitigation program, it has to be in this plan, so that was a good start for us to get all that information in there. Our water allocation permit is being reviewed by NJDEP. They have everything that they need. 2018 roadway improvement project is complete, including punch list items. 2019 roadway improvement project phase 2. We had a pre-construction meeting with Underground Utilities Corporation, and they're supposed to be getting us their actual construction schedule tomorrow. That project involves substantial drainage and sanitary sewer improvements on 3rd Street, Division Street, and East Front Street, as well as the resurfacing of those streets and Warren Street and a section of Kearney Street. The phase 2 of the 2019 roadway project is being conducted by Esposito Construction. They were the successful low bidder on that portion, and they've begun work this week on Kearney Street. They're also going to do the balance of Main Street that hasn't been resurfaced, Hurley Street and Center Street. That work's already underway. The Beach Park outfall reconstruction, we were supposed to have, they're supposed to be on site on Monday, but we haven't seen them yet. I have to ask Trevor, where they are. Benjamin Terry Park and Veterans Park, they finally finished most of the punch list items. They'd say that the job is complete. Main Street Park contractor is underway, and they've installed the new playground equipment, and they're working on reconstructing the ballpark infield. Improvements to Kearney Street Park, we have received Monmouth County Open Space Grant funding, and we have to follow up on our match from Green Acres, which we've applied for. The library chimney replacement has been commissioned. They will be making that repair hopefully within the next week to 10 days. Trevor is working on finalizing the flood damage prevention ordinance with Mike Lane and Councilman Good. They're finally reconciling different issues, and hopefully a final draft will be before you shortly. On the TAP grant, that's the Transportation Alternatives Program grant, pedestrian safety project, I approved the proposal provided by the state's approved contractor. They're going to execute a contract with the engineer CME, and we should begin the public meeting portions where there'll be a lot of soliciting public input on the improvements that we'd like to see in the target area. I also attended a meeting at the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority on our Complete Streets program. It was a consultant selection committee meeting, and as you're aware, the NJTPA has made grant funds available to Keyport to draft a Complete Streets policy, a Complete Streets ordinance, and to execute a demonstration project. They received about 7 really good proposals, and they went through a matrix scoring process to make sure that they were in compliance with the Brooks Act, and they've narrowed the field down to 2 proposals, and we're going to have meetings with both of those proposers next week, and hopefully a contract will be awarded shortly thereafter. I also had a meeting with Jeff Bueller from the Neighborhood Preservation Program. He's the director of the NPP office in the Department of Community Affairs. It was a worthwhile meeting. I went down to Trenton to see him, and it helped clarify quite a few things. We applied for grant funds to examine and enhance our highway district. The NPP program personnel had visited Keyport, and they examined the area that we proposed, and they expressed concerns that the highway district does not really meet the definition of a neighborhood as intended in the NPP program rules, and they've disallowed the use of the grant funds specifically for that purpose, and they've suggested that a more appropriate area would be our central business district, which encompasses, in their opinion, a true neighborhood. Jeff understood our interest in revitalizing our highway district, and he offered to assist us in obtaining additional grant funding and support for that purpose as well, and he directed me to a program at DCA that would be willing to assist us in achieving some of the objectives we were seeking to do on the highway. So our next steps moving forward are to appoint an NPP coordinator and also an NPP steering committee. Hopefully we can get those done, in time for the next meeting so that we can get moving on this. The money's just sitting there waiting to be spent, and they're pretty eager to give it to us, actually. We have outstanding grant applications, our local aid for 2020 from DOT. We applied for funds to improve Church Street from First Street to Atlantic. We also applied for Bikeways Grant Fund, which we're waiting to hear on. We applied for Safe Streets to Transit, and that would be to construct a bridge over the Chingarora Creek adjacent to the culvert to allow for improved pedestrian access so people don't have to walk out into the highway. We did apply for CDBG funding for the Broad Street Sidewalk Improvement Project from Maple Place to Route 36. I know the council members and members of the community are aware of the concerns that were brought to us about conditions on those sidewalks and how they affect children going to school. So we applied for grant funding, and the good news is that it appears that we're going to be receiving a big chunk of those funds, and we've asked for a meeting with the county to try and coordinate with the project to repave Broad Street while we do the sidewalks. We've also received word that the Keyport First Aid Squad has been successful in securing funding for their ADA access project to improve their facility and make it handicapped accessible for parking and restroom upgrades, as well as certain ramps within the building itself. We're pursuing grant funding for Teresa Street Park and Cedar Street Park as well. With regard to redevelopment projects, I met with Clay Perlman, who assures me that they're going to be breaking ground by the year's end. Time is wasting, but he tells me they are. I also have had a number of discussions with interested parties who are interested in purchasing Aero Marine, and they've told me they've met with the owners several times, so I expect that we'll see some kind of action on that. And on the scattered sites, our focus has been on 75 Manchester. We had a community meeting here in the council chamber last week, and we have a good sense of what the community is interested in seeing. We're going to meet with the developer to talk to him about the realities of what the community is willing to accept. You've seen some action down at Longview. They're surcharging the soil. They're bringing in loads of soil to try and compress the land underneath to make it available for construction. Once they put the surcharge on, that has to stay for a number of months before they can begin actual construction. We have a meeting next week with the owner of 149 West Front to find out where his project's at and how we can help him. I am also happy to report that his other business, the Keyport Fishery, has put up a trash enclosure. So that's in place. We had representatives from Vonage on site today. They came in to look at our phone system, and we're looking at a switchover on, I believe it's Veterans Day in November, where we're going to be out of the office and they can come in and do all the reprogramming that they have to do, and hopefully we'll be already ported over in November. Hazard mitigation, as I mentioned, we have updated our countywide multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, and that includes every project that you could conceive of that we'd like to have funded. And then finally, there have been a number of complaints about the Route 35 resurfacing project, And as directed, that's a project that was done by DOT. It was done over the course of the evenings. I don't know if you may have encountered road closures or lane closures while they did some improvements, I use the term loosely, up on Route 35. The state utilized a process called slurry sealing to try and extend the life of the existing roadway. This was not a traditional mill and overlay that is usually done to restore pavement. Basically, they put a hot coat of aggregate and binder down and then wiped it with a truck that especially had a wiping equipment behind it. The job appears to not have been properly executed and may be an inappropriate use for such a high-volume roadway. The day after they completed it, the surface was scuffed, embossed, and imprinted in many areas with tire tracks and chunks missing. And the general roadway has an unpleasant driving feel to it. It's kind of gritty, and it's not like a smooth road. So as directed by the mayor and council, I've asked the engineers to interact with NJDOT. They will be walking the site later this week and give us their report, and we will be working with the mayor to contact NJDOT to find out what they're going to do about it. That's my report. I'm happy to answer questions.
Trevor did answer, and he's meeting with the contractor for 35 Friday morning. So he's actually physically bringing them there to show them, just in case they didn't want to go out and ride it themselves. So he's actually going to drive them over it. And if we don't get results from that or an expected improvement by the end of the year, then I have absolutely no qualms with reaching out to the Aberdeen mayor and the Old Bridge mayor, and we can write a unified letter to NJDOT, because it's just awful all the way up through Cliffwood and Lawrence Harbor. So our residents and visitors deserve better than what they deliver here, especially when you go down south to 35 south into more economic different status. It's perfectly fine and smooth, so you deserve better than what they delivered here. So thank you, Steve, for continuing to follow up on that as well. Does anyone have any questions for Steve?
I do. Okay. So I sent you an email, the FEMA funded hazard mitigation grant program.
Yes.
There was an item about dredging.
Yes.
So I asked where are you dredging, and
Sure.
so.
Yeah, and I hadn't had a chance to answer you yet, but the dredging would be both Lupatitong and Chingarora Creeks, as well as the harbor itself. That would be the
Okay, so that's including both. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
what I need to know. Next question. So about the NPP program. So are we also considering not just this central area, also all of the business districts? Since we got turned down to work on
They are submitting to me a proposed boundary map that would include the properties that they think are appropriate. The district has to be contiguous, meaning it has to be connected. So if there's like a remote area, you can't gerrymander it and have like an alleyway that connects everything. So they're gonna propose an area, and then I'll have it before the council for consideration, and we'll have to endorse it.
I'm not done yet. So regarding the Keyport Energy Initiative, so I assume that means our local phone lines are gonna be down for that day, correct? For that day that they're gonna do direct install program? That's in here.
That's in here.
Oh, it's just in
The
here.
cottage.
Yeah, direct
Oh.
install is a different program. It's under tech review, I have it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's internal to the building, and while we're closed, I imagine the phones might be off individually one by one for 5 minutes, but there shouldn't be any interruption in service.
Okay, no.
The police? Momentarily, I mean, they're gonna go phone by phone, so this one's out of service, so they'll ring on another phone, and then, ultimately.
Have we notified county just in case we have?
Oh, I'm sure we'll let them know.
Okay, cool. And then my last thing was, I was driving in today and I noticed that they said exit 117 is gonna be closed overnight.
We did have notification of that was coming.
Okay.
We did.
I
Yeah,
just saw it today.
It closed today?
Yeah, it said overnight, it said from 9 a.m. to 9 a.m.
I wasn't aware it was today. They gave us notification that it was gonna be happening in the future.
Okay.
But they didn't notify us that it was, today was the future.
So I went on to 511nj.org before I came here,
Sure.
and I finally found the announcements, but I went on the Turnpike, I went on 5 websites before I could even find
Track it down, yeah.
so,
I think they're diverting to the next exit, you know, they're working on the ramp.
Right.
So it's a good thing that they're working on it, but again, I can fish up the email I got, which was through Trevor, and they were gonna let us know when it was gonna actually happen.
they put a pre-announcement out last week that it was gonna be this week, but without dates, and then today
Yeah.
they put up 9 PM to 5 AM, but then the announcements online all have completely different times.
Right,
And
yeah.
some are onbound, northbound, some are southbound,
Yeah.
some say 7 AM, some say that it's gonna start at 7 AM, so it's
It's
definitely,
definitely gonna be over by 7 AM.
it's definitely not a consistent and clear message.
Sure. Well,
I guess that's my only concern, like, I was just like, oh, okay.
yeah, it'll be in the deep hours of the overnight, and my understanding is supposed to be finished by 5 AM.
Okay.
But I'll find out what happened tomorrow, and how long it's gonna go on for.
Thank you, that's all I had.
What are we doing with all the extra cups and string if we're replacing the phones?
We're gonna use them at the Keyport Music Festival, that everybody should attend.
Steve, under scattered sites, can I get there's a pile of trash now in the middle of First and Walnuts property.
First and one.
The
333,
yeah,
yes.
333 First.
I can tell you, they seem to have no problem with paying the fines that we levy on them. I think last week they received another fine for $1,000, and they just write a check. So maybe it's time to ratchet it up a little bit with them, but they're several $1,000s into us, into them already.
We don't want their money, we want them to
Well, to
start
do what they're supposed to
building
do,
and-
sure,
right.
yeah. I understand they're trying to market the site, so maybe somebody else will buy it and do something with it, but,
Okay.
yeah, I'll have an inspector visit tomorrow.
Is there any way we can get in touch with the owners, or maybe sit them down like we're sitting down with the owners of the Keyport, the fishery?
They keep
Sure.
sending their attorney to court, so they obviously don't have any interest in coming themselves, but.
Yeah, they don't show up themselves, they have counsel, I think.
They were here at all the scattered site, hearings though, you know,
Yeah, they didn't want
chomping
us,
at the bit, no, don't take it, you know, we're building right away, don't
Yeah.
take it, but,
I'm
you
pretty
know,
sure we ignored them though. I think it is included.
It is.
It
definitely
is. But,
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I can get somebody interested in it, but we'll take action on that and
Thanks.
ratchet it up a little bit.
Hey, Steve.
Yes,
Hi.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if I'm like not getting all my emails, but I know that there was some correspondence with Line Bike.
There was, I have not heard back
Okay,
from
I wasn't sure
yeah.
I was missing.
The guy was like full of himself and how
Yes.
wonderful they were and oh, this isn't true. And
Yes.
I said, yeah, it kind of is true. And I sent them the emails that we got originally from the company. And then he went dark on me, but I'll send him a follow-up
Oh,
tomorrow.
yeah, I wasn't sure if I
Yeah.
missed.
No, anything I got, I sent to you guys.
Yep, cool, thank you.
thank you. Just want to highlight some upcoming events for the month of October, since some of them are before our next meeting. October 9th is National Walk to School Day in well, that's actually a different day, but Keyport's acknowledging it on October 9th. Keyport Music Festival will be October 12th. The Scarecrow Contest is October 19th. The Keyport Historical Society Tea at the Yacht Club is October 19th. October 26th is the next beach sweep. It's also the Halloween parade beginning at 11 AM in Fireman's Park, followed by Community Day, which will be hosted at Keyport Central School. Next, we will go to the consent agenda.
Resolution 26319 is the payment of bills. Resolution 26419 is the governing body certification of the annual audit. Resolution 26519 authorizes the release of the performance bond for Henry Marotti for the property located at 36 Atlantic Street, Block 92, Lots 2 and 3 on the tax map of the borough. Resolution 26619 authorizes the release of the maintenance bond for Penny Bags LLC for the property located at 1 Monroe Street, Block 35.01, Lot 1 on the tax map of the borough. Resolution 26719, extending the tax exemption for Oyster Bay Urban Renewal, Inc., formerly known as Keyport Legion Apartments, Inc., pursuant to the limited dividend law and the long-term tax exemption law, and authorizing the execution of an amended and restated tax abatement agreement. Resolution 26819 authorizes the refund of a tax overpayment to a totally disabled veteran. Resolution 26919 corrects Resolution number 24019 and certifies the cost of cleaning up properties and placing a lien upon such lands at 1 and 3 Walnut Terrace and 216 Second Street. Resolution 27019 certifying the cost of cleaning up 1 and 3 Walnut Terrace and placing a lien upon such lands. And Resolution 27119 authorizes the hiring of a crossing guard for the borough, that's Leonard Hansel.
I just got one question, and since we're here, I hear it called different things all the time. Is it Keyport Leisure Apartments currently, or Keyport Legion Apartments?
Answer, shall I?
You're the manager.
So,
Sorry, I'm sorry, I guess if you're gonna, I thought it was gonna be a yes or no answer, if you could just say your state and your
I'm
name.
already here, I'll do it.
Okay, great.
My name is David Locke, and I'm attorney for what is right this second the Keyport Legion Apartments Incorporated, doing business as Keyport Leisure Bay Apartments.
So it's both then,
It's both.
that's why there's.
It's gonna be neither in the very, very, very near future. We've already got
Okay.
one approval from the Treasury. We're waiting on a second approval from the Secretary of State, which we expect any day now. It will be the Oyster Bay Urban Renewal, Inc.
But for documentation purposes, Legion is correct, is the LLC.
Legion is the LLC, is the incorporation, it's not an LLC. It's a
Correct, sorry. Okay,
non-profit organization.
thank
Any
you.
other questions while I'm up here? Okay,
I don't think so. We have to open it to the public, so there might be more
Understood.
questions, but I don't know.
We're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just didn't put it else we have here. Can I have a motion open to the public?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public wish to come forward on the consent agenda topics only? Yes, Mr. Felton.
Andrew Kelsey, 29 St. Peter's Place. It was brought up about fines in the borough and everything, and it seems like it comes up a lot that some property owners, these deadbeat property owners, just seem to pay the fines and don't care. Does the borough maybe perhaps want to consider raising the fines for continued deadbeat property owners? Just a thought. For people that
what do you mean deadbeat property owners?
that don't habitual, that don't respond to the notices, the cleanup, so maybe, the violation isn't solved within X amount of time, or they receive so many violations. Not something they get, the regular residents, but it seems like a few of the properties that people just cut the checks and don't care. So maybe 3
Maybe
months,
like a
6 months.
tiered, you're saying, like a tiered if it's not a judge?
Yeah, tiered or,
Not even legal.
I would say that
There is a range that the judge is the one who decides who gets what fine. He knows who's been before him before versus who's a repeat offender. And the scheduling of any fines is subject to judicial review. Kind of has to pass the smile test. But we are in discussions about other strategies to bring pressure to bear on some of these, and there should be something forthcoming shortly.
I think maybe our code enforcement official could be looking into continuous,
Yeah.
daily violations.
I can tell you that is close to occurring on those problem properties.
okay, that's all I have to say, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Amy.
Ms. Wells?
George Wallingford for Second Street. I just need a question answered. Did we determine that Mr. Gallo's report would fall underneath this? Okay, I got a question for Steve then. The old Davis Locksmith property up on the highway, you reported a couple of meetings ago that you were going to talk to them. That's a building with the roof is half on, half off.
Oh, yeah, we've been in conversations with them on a pretty regular basis. We got their attention when we condemned the property, and they came in for a meeting, and They represented, and this will probably be about a month ago, that they were gonna redevelop the property. They had a written plan and they showed it to us, but then nothing's happened since then. That is exactly the type of property that should be subject to continuous violations. And it should also be inspected for structural integrity. Now that the roof is open, anything could be going on inside.
Well, there's a ton of pictures there.
Yeah, just living that, yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll make it a point to follow up on that too.
Thank you.
What about, Councilman Sheridan's favorite property on Main Street?
66 Main Street, that's a tough one. We just sent them out, this is across the library,
No, Main Street,
66 Main Street,
the little white house up the street, past the museum.
the grass up to. I don't know what the status of that is, I'll look into it.
Oh, but since you brought it up, how about the one across from the library?
We were out there in enforcement because the weeds in the back are pretty high.
Have they come forward with a new plan? Because I know they had originally tried to,
And they wanted the old plan approved with inadequate parking, and they were told no. And
They
that's since have kind of gone dark on us, but we can look at it. 66 Main, you said, Joe, right? Yes, please. Thank you.
They're on the scattered sites, right, Mayor?
I believe it
both
is.
of them.
Yeah, the White House, but I wasn't sure about the 66,
Yeah.
thanks.
They actually, when we put pressure on them from the scattered site, they actually listed it for sale, and we thought someone was going to buy it. They actually made an effort in cleaning the front of it up, which Councilman Sheridan was extremely excited about. But now they've kind of
Okay.
gone off dormant as well. Mr. Lee?
Michael Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport. I wasn't going to say anything, but now that you got into it, I sent an email to all members, to the mayor, members of council today, with pictures of 75 Manchester. Definitely an enforcement issue. Walls down, holes in the roof, and so.
Mr. Gallo and I talked about it this afternoon, and we're gonna see if we can move forward with the pressure that we put on 333 First Street to have them tear that down, so.
Michael and I had an opportunity to discuss this afternoon, and I told him Trevor is gonna do a structural analysis on the building. And if it's determined that it's unsafe, we'll order it to, have it ordered to be taken down.
At 160, we talked about 162 Second Street today also, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great, I'm glad it's on the list, and I appreciate your input.
Wow, 160, really? 162 seconds, too, man?
Next to Lincoln Home.
Yeah, nice, very nice.
Strange building.
Yeah, no roof.
Anyone else want, yes, Mr. Graham?
Albert Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. First of all, Steve, best wishes to you, Mike, for a speedy recovery and
That's
everything.
kind of
like
you,
that.
I appreciate it.
Best wishes to him. I have one question here, Steve, on Resolution 267-19 about the tax exemption.
Sure.
Can you more or less explain that?
Sure. Towns meet their obligations to provide affordable housing in a number of ways.
Okay.
Some communities have housing authorities where they provide affordable housing through public housing. Keyport has a number of high-rise apartments that are age-restricted and dedicated to low and moderate income residents.
Okay.
When those buildings were originally constructed, under the applicable laws at the time, they were afforded a tax exemption that allowed them to be nonprofit and to pay low rents.
Okay.
Now, we're at the end of the original exemption for Keyport, Legion, whatever you want to call it, apartments. And they've come back to us and they said, look, we want to continue fulfilling this mission. We'd like to continue offering low and moderate income individuals, senior citizens, housing at affordable prices.
Okay.
And they also would like to modernize their facilities because, as you can imagine, they were built in 1972 or so. So some of the appliances are dated, the bathrooms are dated, and the physical plant needs certain upgrades. So they basically come in and said, we want to keep doing this. We want to upgrade for everybody, so everybody gets a modern apartment. but we can't do it financially without support from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And in order to tap that funding, they have to be a bona fide affordable housing project with support from the community in the form of a tax abatement. So this essentially extends the abatement for a period of time so that they can accomplish those goals. If we were to decide that we don't want to extend this, then the project could go market rate, and the individuals who live there would probably see an exponential increase in their rent. They wouldn't be able to afford it, so they'd be looking for new homes, and we'd have a ripple effect of negative impacts. There'd be a lot of people who couldn't afford to live here, especially senior citizens. So we felt it was an opportunity to keep them in the community, to keep them doing what they do, which by all accounts, everybody's pleased with. They're a very professionally run outfit, and it is a place where someone who needs an affordable apartment can find a home. So we're interested in continuing our support. Just like the past, it really, there'll be a modest increase because there's an administrative fee that's being included, but it's basically the same amount of revenue that we got in the past we'll get going forward.
Will it benefit the taxpayers of Keyport too, or whatever?
Certainly would benefit low and moderate income seniors who live there, and we think because it adds to the diversity and the affordability of the community, I think it does benefit the taxpayers.
Okay, one more question. I've asked this before, but any possible chance on the governor coming here?
There's always a chance. We can reach out again if you like. I've asked several times, but his schedule's all over the map. Yeah, understood. We'll make a pitch.
Okay, thank you.
Elmer,
Yeah.
when it says exemption, it doesn't mean that they're not paying anything. They pay us a lump sum.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure that.
Oh, I understand that.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Excuse me, can I comment on the apartments?
Sure.
My name is Angie, I've never been here.
Angie, if you could just state your address for the record, please.
My address is 71 Broad Street,
Thank you.
Keyport.
Thank you.
As I said, I've never been here, so I don't understand exactly how it all works yet, but,
No problem.
the senior, housing, not only accommodates the older people, but older people with disabilities, who wouldn't find as much support as they do here in Keyport, through the senior center, which I also attend. And I also wanted to thank you guys for getting the grants that are required for the shuttle that does the loop around town, because I just found out about it. And my service dog, my CNI dog, and I, we've been able to go to the store independently, and I'm extremely grateful to you guys for that.
Thank you, Angie.
Because it gives me a freedom that I don't otherwise have. Because I know the driver, Ginny,
Ginny was very excited to pick you up on Thursday.
and she looks after everybody on that bus. So, I mean, I could cry right now for joy. So I just want to thank you guys, and hope that you'll continue to support the senior community buildings, and, you know, we need the older people here,
Sure.
because they have so much wisdom about so many things. We can all learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Miss Angie.
Mr. Fuller?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Just a couple of questions.
Your name and address?
Ed Baru, 59 West Front Street, Keyport. I can see the microphones don't work too good yet back there, right? Or we're not talking into them.
Sorry. We'll talk.
Yeah, well, now you're.
We can do a better job.
Anyway, anybody aware that the lights and poles out here are not working?
Oh, boy.
Whew.
Oh, boy.
I
It's
did
the only
not
thing-
ask him to say that.
It's the only thing I've heard about from the mayor for about the
Oh,
past
okay,
week.
then you know that. Fine.
Actually, we-
Cross that off real quick.
DPW did a survey last night, and the mayor and I are gonna go for a little walk this evening after the meeting, and I'm told that the turnaround with JCP&L is about 3 days. So hopefully in 3 days, 4 days, we'll have that.
Oh, good.
It's been a while, though.
Yeah. Steve, the post office, when is that lease up? I never asked this.
22.
What is it?
22.
24.
24, sorry. October 24, I think.
2024.
2024?
Yes, there are 5-year extensions. They may be on their last 5-year extension.
Do we have any solution for that yet, or we're just kicking that around, or,
What do you mean by solution?
excuse me?
What do you mean by solution? Like,
What are we gonna do with it? Are we gonna take it? We're gonna rent it
at
out?
the end of the lease,
Yes.
what we're gonna do?
Yeah.
I figure it was gonna be nothing specific.
There's no discussion on it yet?
It's something that anecdotally we've
Right.
talked about. I can tell you that I believe the post office had, if they were not in a lease, would not be interested in staying there because they're not using the full facility. Originally, it was a distribution hub, and now it's just a small post office. The scheme was set up years ago. A private developer leased the land from the borough at what seems today to be a relatively inexpensive price, and they contracted with the federal government to build the post office and lease it to them. And the lease was originally 25 years with a number of 5-year extensions. They're on their last 5-year extension. I can tell you that they have inquired, looking to purchase the land under which the post office is located, and they gave us, they gave us an incredibly low bid, low ball offer of $250,000. So I told them to call us back when they add a zero. So I don't suspect it's going to go smoothly. I think we will be in a position to tell them to remove their building and be on your way when the lease expires, whenever that happens.
So, you said to remove their building, they have to remove it, or?
It's
Yeah,
their building.
the original lease says that they have to return the land to the way it was when it was leased, which was, my understanding, a vacant parcel.
No, I think we're in a pretty good position to do whatever you venture to do.
There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that.
It would be less expensive for them to leave the building, but frankly, who wants it?
Okay, thank you for that. The street's been flooding out quite often. We really haven't had too many storms here, but it's still flooding down here by the parking lot. Is that because there's not a boot on the floodgate down here, on the storm drain?
The water does appear to come up through the inlets. I haven't seen a complete breach where the water itself came over the dock and into the parking lot. So it is conceivable that if you had tide flex valves on the outfalls for those inlets, that the water could be held back.
Can I add to that, Steve?
Sure.
So I was actually there yesterday. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was,
And,
it was.
And it was another one of those perfect situations where it was high tide. I think it's new moon right now, and the winds were pushing a little bit as well. It was coming over the bulkhead on the westernmost part where it starts to go into the Lapataton. And I think that has to do with the degradation that's happening over there, right before the old E-Cottage Inn property. But in that case, it did come over, but, and I was surprised to see that because normally we don't see that. We just sort of see it coming in.
Yeah, it comes up through the inlets.
And it went as far as it usually does during a winter push, you know, so it was interesting, but
So
I
is-
think bulkheading, and obviously bulkheading, but, you know, I think my read is that we probably still get some of that type of flooding, even with the duck-bill valve at the end. But it would definitely help.
I can tell you that the owners of 149 West Front Street have submitted a plan to DEP to raise the bulkhead to the same height as the promenade. So we're kind of going to have a missing tooth there with Fireman's Park. It'll hurt, because the water's going to go in Fireman's Park. You know, so we have to try and coordinate with that, and we do have a meeting with them next week.
So
But to
the-
answer your original question, if it's the coming up through the storm drain in the, parking lot, it does come up.
Are you saying the water came over the bulkhead
It
on
did,
western
it
part?
did yesterday, yeah.
And that's the only place?
No, it definitely came up through the outfall pipe, but,
That-
yeah.
By
The
the mat.
storm drain, Mr. Gallo and I have gone on a couple rides, and originally we thought it was just the tide coming in, but it is coming in through the storm drain first. So there is,
And then coming
we have
down.
identified that it needs a new valve.
I don't see that.
And it was flooded all weekend at night. It was just yesterday that it actually came in, the high tide during the day as well.
No, it seems like it's getting more and more deeper and deeper.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Mayor, you're absolutely right, and I don't wanna, I don't think you were saying that I wasn't agreeing with that, I am agreeing with that,
Correct.
but Ed, it comes up, if you know the sewer drain, right where the inlet,
Right,
right where, right, exactly, right where you pull into the
Yeah.
parking lot, that starts filling up first. So it's definitely coming through the outfall pipe first. And if it was just coming over the bulkhead, like I was trying to say, it might just be that part of the parking lot that gets hit, but anyway.
What's the
ask me
process
what's
of putting in a block there? Is it a big deal?
The valves are expensive, but they've come off patent, so there's knockoffs that you can get, but they can be $50,000-$60,000 for a piece of rubber.
I think you've had it here before, didn't you?
They're relatively new devices.
Oh, not the
but-
new ones.
Yeah, they had tied gates probably.
Yeah.
They were like flaps,
Yes.
like that. You should have had them if you didn't.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think we did.
But they usually deteriorate and fall apart. So, I'll talk to the engineer, we'll take a look at it.
All right, and then my last question. Is Valerie out sick? I
Um,
haven't seen Valerie here.
That is not a question that we would answer.
Okay. Want me to rephrase it, or don't ask it?
It's a personnel matter, and it's not something
Oh,
that
okay,
we're
that's
gonna
right.
respond to.
That's good enough. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else from the public wish to come forward? Mr. Lane?
Yeah, on the flooding at Fireman's Park, yesterday morning, the tide level was 6 feet 9 inches, 6.9 feet high. The water was over the bulkhead,
Correct.
and it had nothing to do with valves on the pipes.
It was both, no.
It started with a valve on the pipe.
What we're saying is that in the parking lot where it comes in first is that, but yesterday's flooding was definitely because of the height of the tide.
There are days when the tide is not at 6.9, it's down at 6, 5,
Correct.
5, 8, and it comes up through the valves.
It always comes up through the valves,
Right.
Yeah.
always.
And that
But
happens,
yesterday was
that happens
definitely
multiple times in a month.
Right.
But yesterday, as Councilman Fanoff said, the wind was out of the east for 2 days. We had a 6'9" tide, and I have pictures, I'll send them to you. We had, water was almost up to the curb by the firemen.
Yep. Up to almost.
They were
up to
actually
front.
monitoring it the day before also, because they thought they were gonna have to close the flea market early, but it actually came in the next day
I'm
instead.
sorry, they were gonna have to close water?
They were monitoring it all week because they thought they were going to have to close the flea market early.
Oh, well, the flea market, I went down to the flea market. They were squeezing to get their displays up because the water was so high.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward? Or motion to close the
Motion
public?
to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second. Yeah, you got it.
You got it? Did you get that or not?
I did.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Sheridan,
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Members on the dais, please note to please stay after the meeting because we have to all sign the annual audit form to be compliant with the state. Next, we have a public hearing, adoption of ordinance to Ordinance number 17-19, amend salary ordinance, and the clerk will read the ordinance by title.
This is an ordinance of the Borough of Keyport, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, amending and superseding the ordinance fixing the salaries of the various officers, clerks, and employees of the Borough of Keyport.
Have a motion to open to the public.
Motion to open.
Second.
Good microphone skills there. All in favor?
I listen.
Anyone from the public wish to come forward regarding ordinance 17-19? Have a motion to close the public.
Motion to close.
Second.
There you go.
You have a phone with this, Michelle?
Can I have a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Move it.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Sheridan?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Can I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as adopted?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstain? We have ordinance introductions. The first one is ordinance revised parking restrictions in municipal parking lots, and the clerk will read that one by title.
Amending Chapter 7, Traffic, to reflect revised parking restrictions at certain municipal parking lots.
Can I have a motion to introduce?
Move it.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Discussion?
Certainly.
Thank you, sorry. This is actually reflecting what we had discussed at last meeting, correct?
I think it was 2
meeting
meetings.
2
before,
meetings
yeah.
ago, sorry about that. Okay, so, actually, I'm trying to pull it up because I had a question about it. It covers the parking lot for sure down by title in the,
By Olson.
by Olson's?
Yes, for the parking lot associated with Veterans and Terry Park.
Okay, all right, as well as the one over here in,
Actually, there's more than one.
Yes, there is.
It would be parking lots on the south side of American Legion Drive.
So behind Nemo and behind,
Real Gym.
Jack's.
yep,
Yeah.
okay.
And Real Gym, right.
And American Legion, and the homes that are there, and Larry Vecchio's house, all of that's included.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Sheridan?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Can I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish?
Motion.
Second.
This will be published in the Asbury Park Press. Second. Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a second introduction of an ordinance tonight. It's to amend land use regulations. The clerk will read the ordinance by title.
Amending Chapter 25, Land Use Regulations to reflect revisions to the General Commercial District Regulations.
Have a motion to introduce.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Mayor, and everybody for the update.
Roll call.
Councilmember Sheridan?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Do you have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as introduced in the Asbury Park
Move it.
Press?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain or no? Communications by consent. And communication to receive and file. Can I have a motion open to the public?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public wish to come forward on communication on, by consent items 1 through 5 on the agenda?
Motion closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion on the communications? Can I have approval for receipt and, approval for, communications 1 through 4 and receipt and file for an item 5?
Move it.
Second.
I need a roll call, please.
Councilmember Sheridan?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Patopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Anyone have any new business?
I thought there were two different sets of communications. I was waiting for the second one.
It's one public for all the communications.
I did have comments.
We have another public comment. We can still, Mayor, may I make a suggestion?
That, we're gonna have it in the next public,
Yeah.
which is in 1 second anyway.
Yeah. Just to keep the order, that's all.
Any unfinished business? Attorney's report? Have a motion open to the public?
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Listed under communications is a letter that I addressed to all members of council and the mayor. And it was triggered by, and it had attached to it, a photograph of the out-of-control smoke shop. And the out-of-control smoke shop had an advertisement in the window, medical marijuana patient discount. And it triggered a concern that we do not have defined in our zoning ordinance a zone restriction relative to a medical marijuana dispensary or shop selling medical marijuana, or a shop selling marijuana. Now, in the past, for alcohol, establishments serving alcohol, we have restrictions on setbacks from church, setbacks from all kinds of restrictions. On adult entertainment, we have restrictions. I'll give you a background, probably before most of you, I know before any of you were on council. We had a developer from developer from Marlboro who wanted to come in and put a XXX shop right in Keyport on the highway. And we had no restriction in our zoning ordinance. The good news was that the developer's application had an error in it in terms of lot and block. And so I got involved and went up to the Rutgers Library and we looked up, we were searching for an ordinance that we could model after that had been upheld by the Supreme Court. And it was from Houston, Texas. And we brought that ordinance into town and implemented it in our zoning ordinance. At the same time that the developer was appealing his rejection, and so there was a lot of lawyers involved. And we really want to avoid that going forward. It turns out the applicant and the mayor of Marlboro, I know the mayor of Marlboro was indicted and the applicant, they had legal problems. And so that threat sort of evaporated. But I think the council needs to be proactive in establishing, are we going to allow marijuana in some district? Which district? I would recommend you don't do the neighborhood commercial because it's got a lot of residential properties around it. It's not very far from the schools. Setbacks from schools, setbacks from churches, I think you need to define those kind of things if you're going to allow it. Or you could take the direction not to allow it at all, just like you don't allow gas stations in any district. Not allow marijuana dispensary in any district in the borough. And so I was hoping that in this ordinance to change the zoning ordinance for the one that you just introduced for allowing outside entertainment, etc. That could be piggybacked on it, but it's too late. So I ask you to take serious the issue of how we're going to deal with in the future, and it's coming down the pipe. And we should have control in place prior to somebody showing up and opening up the shop. Because right now we have no restriction against it, none at all.
Mr. Lane, I think we have to wait and see what, if any, recreational marijuana legislation gets signed into law before we do that. Because we have to know but prior to enacting zoning ordinances, I think we need to know the full scope of the law, how it's going to be regulated by the state. And I think all that information needs to be considered by the council before any determination is made as to how shops or other facilities will be, how their land use will be regulated. I think we need to see what the enforcement measures are in place by the state first.
I would go the opposite direction. I would put a restriction in now, and when the state rules come out, update the restriction. Because it's the same problem we had with the triple X operation. We had nothing in place.
I don't think the council should be duplicative in their efforts. I think that, and I don't think, honestly, I don't think the state is going to place, I'm almost sure they're not going to place land use restrictions in the statute, if any statute is ever enacted regarding recreational marijuana. So I think the council's, there's going to be a lot of information to consider that I think should go into that, and I don't think it should be preemptive. I think it should be in response to
I'm
what
not
the
only
state
talking
proposes.
about recreational marijuana, I'm talking about medical marijuana dispensaries.
Those are separate. Those are legal now.
I know.
Then there's certain licenses.
That's why,
And that's what I'm talking about. We should have in our zoning ordinance where they should be allowed.
Thank you.
I don't think they should be allowed in the neighborhood commercial next to the school. I don't think they should be allowed next to a church, etc.
Well, at the same time, I don't think there's, I'm not sure if there's been an application. I mean, I know there's a few pending, but I don't think there's any.
I think that's the point.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, there's
That
that,
take action before you get the application and you have nothing on the books to block it.
right,
Which is a problem we had with the triple X operation.
that's understood, Mr. Lane. I'm
Thank you.
assuming.
I have a question, just out of clarification. So when the state gives more, because I know that they're gonna have more dispensaries, like, don't they decide where they go?
No.
No?
They're just gonna give licenses.
They're gonna licenses, somebody will come in here and say, I'm gonna do it.
But I thought there was like pieces of that legislation that said they had to be certain parts of the state that had to distribute that. I thought I
There might be zones, like, within, I see what you're saying, like, certain counties will have so
Yeah,
many,
that's
right,
right.
but they're not going to go into your land use and within your
I just didn't realize that was
municipality.
even on the
That's a good point.
list.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Mayor, may I say something?
Sure.
I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that. I don't really care for marijuana myself personally. But since they don't have anything up now, I think we need to wait to see what comes out.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to come forward? Mr. Balloon?
Just like to say about marijuana. Mike is absolutely right. I was here when the triple X come in, it was a court battle going back and forth, back and forth. It was not allowed after a while, thanks to Mike. And if you have something in place now, it would be better than not having something in place. And I think he's absolutely right. You know, because it's coming. And I'll tell you another thing. And you might know this, you might not know this. The place over on Clark Street, that back street. there's talk-
Fragrance Resources?
Excuse me?
Fragrance Resources?
Yes. There's talk that they wanted to change that into manufacturing or however
the
they
grow facility?
grow it or
A
whatever.
grow facility?
In that building, so you might want to try and think about it before you say no.
Thank
Or
you.
don't do it.
Thank you. Mr. Wildman?
George Wallingford, 52nd Street. I offered a couple of items in regards to the bandstand. And one of the things that put my fancy up is that we purchased it without any major dialogue and input from the public. We talked about it a little bit here.
Mr. Well, you're talking about the stage down in,
Yes.
in Park Thanks.
Does anybody up there know what we paid for it?
16,000?
No,
Okay, second guess?
Great.
12,000. It was like 12,500. I mean, I don't know with the
No,
delivery and.
it was $11,602.10.
Are you
Do you know how much,
I wasn't.
pardon me?
I would say she was completely off.
It doesn't, it really doesn't matter who's off. But my question is, does anybody know how much KBBC put into it?
The discussions at the KBBC meeting was that we were gonna put up to 8,000.
Okay, but do you know what they put into it?
I don't have my
I hope it.
monthly report in front of me, but.
They paid $4,602.10,
But originally, we thought the stage was gonna be upwards of 16,000, so.
regardless. So it could have been up to 20,000. The question is, are you aware how much they paid? And obviously, it's not. Why would they have to pay such a little bit of amount, and the taxpayers of the town have to pay a lot more?
You know,
Well,
the
both of the
KBBC, they're both
Yeah.
taxpayers.
No, the KBBC.
Well, the KBBCers taxpayers also.
Off commercial property.
I'm not here to split hairs with you. All right?
But,
If
I'm not
you
sure.
want, all right, the KBBC taxpayers.
So I'm not sure if you're aware that the stage does break down, and we do plan on using it for recreational purposes also, and being able to move it to different parts of the town. to
Okay,
make it
so
more
St. Patrick's Day and Christmas?
St. Patrick's Day, the Christmas festival, we're hoping to have, we had a mini opera, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, a couple years ago down at the waterfront. We definitely have some new voice
Down at the
lessons.
waterfront where the stage would be anyway?
We would
No,
move it.
actually, it was
down
different
by-
location.
It was in a different location. It was actually, it was by the gazebo last time. And when the whole time she was performing, if she was lifted up, it probably would have been better because everyone was the same level as her.
Really?
And then we also have several voice instructors in town now. So we're hoping to have some more localized performances as well as maybe some small drama theater.
So that justifies the taxpayers in the town paying more?
Yes, because it's a recreational investment as well.
And it belongs to the borough.
Yeah, also.
Again, I understand that, and as I said, when we were talking about it, make sure it's on wheels, because I'm gonna put it in my driveway then. Because I am part of the borough.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I'm saying this, so again, all my question is, why did we purchase this without a step up onto it? That Mr. Paul, I don't know his last name, mentioned to the mayor and council that we had a milk crate that we were using to get up on it. Why didn't we buy stairs with it?
Yeah, we can do that, we can buy
We will.
stairs.
No, was that the $20,000 version?
I think it's a nice upgrade to the town.
I'm not saying it's not, I'm just asking questions. As a taxpayer, we're flipping more for this to have Fiddler on the Roof or whatever you're saying is gonna perform on it than what it's actually being used for now.
For
I
the
don't know what
summer,
you
it was utilized frequently for KBBC performances, you are correct.
Frequently, every Thursday night. Okay, so that's not frequently, but if you think it is, that's fine. So nobody up there knew you guys paid for this under payment of bills?
I thought, I definitely knew that we paid for it. Admittedly, I thought it was the 16. Apparently, we got it for less than the 16.
We don't look at what we pay on bills? We just vote?
I couldn't pick it off the top of my head.
No, I'm
so-
asking, you're the one digging, I'm not, I'm just asking questions
And making statements.
and making statements.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's
You
what.
guys voted,
Yep,
roll call, all the way down.
absolutely.
Everybody voted for payment of bills.
Absolutely. What's the issue?
The issue is, as a taxpayer, we paid $7,000 for a bandstand.
Everybody
And-
knows that.
Not everybody knows that, there was, let's see, 16, was it?
I
You
thought
know,
it was
George,
I didn't say
you're
20.
asking
You can-
people
you-
to remember
let's not
numbers
split
from
hairs,
months
George.
ago. I mean, okay, you got them, okay? You win.
I'm okay with
never
that.
Why
said
would
20.
you want to battle with me? I'm addressing the mayor as I was told I was
I
supposed to
understand
do,
that, George,
and
but
now I'm
And we
being
answered.
challenged by you.
because I think you're being unreasonable.
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm entitled to it.
I don't know how to dialogue with
Yeah,
them.
okay.
George is unruly.
Sure.
I'll talk to you about it, George. I'm okay with it.
I'm not saying you aren't.
Yeah,
I'm just
so
asking
let-
a
so give-
question.
so give me a
We
chance.
spent $7,000 at the governing body of the borough of Keyport
Absolutely.
on a stage, and nobody up there knew anything about it.
That's
and
not
they-
true.
That's
Everyone
not
knew
true. That's
about
not
it.
true. So the way this went down, you asked me how much it was, that's fine, but did I know we were approving the stage?
When are we getting a check from KBBC for their part?
probably after our next KBBC meeting,
Okay,
after we authorize the payment of bills from them.
okay.
I'm proud of that stage, George.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be.
Right. I'm hoping, you know, I'm hoping I'll see you at some of the performances.
I hope you do too.
I can vouch that I have seen him there with his wife.
There you
Pardon?
go. So,
I said, I can vouch I saw you there with your wife enjoying it.
Exactly.
there's a lot of, so if I could take an opportunity to address this is the first year we've had it, right? We're gonna spend a lot of time over the next few years making good use of that stage.
I'm not saying you're not.
Right, and then,
Can I
and
do a
so,
follow-up question now?
yeah, absolutely.
All right. What did we do with the old stage?
We never had a
We didn't have, we used to rent
We
it.
were paying to rent one each time.
That was a
we
Right.
went.
That
That's
black one that we used
Yeah,
around
yeah,
town?
that was a rental.
How much did
No,
we
the
pay?
black one you're
Okay.
talking about for St. Patrick's Day and that's a riser that we
Oh,
borrow from
okay.
another municipality.
Right, and we had that down at the waterfront.
When
For
we
the
borrow it, but when we had the stage for the performances last summer, we were renting
Not
the
last summer, I'm
stage.
going back 2 summers ago.
We were renting them. But
We
KBBC was paying to rent them.
We used that stage.
We didn't.
Okay.
You know the blacktop stage, you're talking about the wooden base, the wooden top stage.
We're
is
talking
what-
about the riser stage that we use at the parade
Yeah,
and on
you have it on the corner
tree
across from
line.
the-
Oh, no, okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
not, I don't
Where
think
is
we
that
use
at?
that for the musicians or anything like that.
No, we did, but that's
We,
all right.
we rented stuff, but yeah, I don't know where that is. Where is it?
I don't know, I'm asking Billy White.
It's not theirs. How would they know where it is?
Yeah, I mean, I could find
Yes.
out, if you give
The
me a
borough
chance,
didn't
I'll
know
find
that?
out for you.
No. You don't own a stage except for the one that we bought this summer.
We're talking about the riser, though,
Okay.
right?
Thank you very much.
Hey, George,
Yes,
congratulations on your anniversary.
Oh, my God.
thank you.
That's right.
Mr. Straub?
Jack Straub, 239 Main Street, speaking on behalf of KBBC. Just for the record, I want to clarify what happened with the stage.
Okay.
So, the KBBC, which is funded by an assessment made to commercial property owners,
Yes, sir.
has put on concerts in the mini park for a number of years.
Yes, sir.
Last year, we put on 6 concerts in the summer. Each time we put on a concert, we rented a stage for $1,000. So it cost us $6,000 to rent the stage 6 times. This year, we plan to have 12 concerts. We figured instead of renting a stage 12 times and spending $12,000 and having nothing, could we find something for that amount of money? And the borough administrator and Paul and Keyport did some research, and
Thank you.
they found a stage for around $12,000. It was, first it was 10, then it was 16. It wound up being around $12,000. And in a number of meetings, we worked with the borough administrator, and we found out that the borough could pay approximately $7,000, and the KBBC offered to pay the balance, whatever that was. The concerts that we put on, even though they're paid for by the commercial property owners, by the assessment, they're enjoyed by many more people than just the commercial property
I
owners.
know that.
Many residents, so I think it would make sense for the stage to be shared by the borough and by KBC. I think it was an equitable arrangement. It was almost 50%. As I said, the borough said that they had $7,000 that they could apply, and we agreed to pay for the rest. I wrote the check, signed the check, and gave it to the borough, to the deputy borough clerk yesterday
Yes, sir.
for $4,600. So I believe the borough administrator was only invoiced for the check for the stage by the company that we bought it from
Right.
in September. I believe the borough paid for it, and then I got a receipt asking for the balance, and then we wrote the check yesterday.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of all that.
Okay, no, I just wanted.
Yeah, no, good, like
For the
you said,
record.
I've been over
No,
it.
but you asked.
Yeah, no, I asked the
What was
mayor,
it paid for?
I asked the mayor to see when that check came,
Oh.
but I knew the check came already.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
I just
so
wanted
said I opened
clear up
So
the
it came yesterday, we haven't had a KBBC meeting for me
Right.
to have a payment of bills, so as a board member, how would I have known the check came yesterday?
I don't know what you know.
Okay, so apparently you're saying that you knew it came yesterday and you wanted to know if I knew. I don't receive a statement every week, every day of what checks came in for the record.
Well,
So, Thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Staub a question while he's here?
You come up to the microphone so it's on record,
No
sure.
problem. You can sit next to me.
Sorry.
Name and all that again, or no?
Sure.
George Walling, 54 Second Street. in regards to your KBB website, there's some issues with that. Are you aware? As far as minutes, there's no minutes listed this year at all.
Yeah, all right, I'll be glad to address that.
Yeah, I mean, we can share them, like, I mean, like.
We are aware there are problems, we're trying to get, it's a long story, I'll be glad to have a conversation with
Okay,
you.
but-
The website we're operating under
Mhm.
is a website that was developed by a different company, Direct Development, and
Right.
the company that we use to maintain the website is limited to what it can and can't do. We have all the minutes, I'll be glad to give you a copy of the minutes from, you're right, the minutes from this year are not on there.
Right.
But we'll be happy to give you copies of the minutes and
Really appreciate it.
any month you want. And we're working to get them on there.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also
Oh,
like to.
and congratulations, I heard you were appointed.
Yeah.
Good.
I'd
Good-
also
good
like to
choice.
piggyback off of both of those comments right now, and that is that, one of the reasons the KBBC was able to put their contribution into the stage is because Mr. Straub operated as both president and, executive director this year. So we saved, a lot of money on KBBC, which is how we were able to fund having 13 concerts. And as you just mentioned, he is now the executive director for KBBC, and Maureen is now the president. But if he didn't choose to do all the work that he was doing all year, we would have had 4 concerts and no stage. So, there were some things that maybe, weren't kept up to speed, such as getting minutes posted, but minutes were taken at every meeting and recorded and approved by the board.
He did a lot of work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to add something onto that, your question about why we don't have a step stool, all those pieces, those are things we're going to address in the next meeting. Because with 9/11, we've had some bridge meetings and things of focus, a priority.
I'm sorry, say it again?
KBBC has been focusing on Music Fest to make
Right.
sure that goes well. We also had a bridge meeting on September 11th, to
Right.
make sure that we were present for that. So regarding the extra, the steps and those additions that we want to put on the stage, we're working to get those addressed in the next set of meetings.
Yeah, but when you, can I
Okay.
back up? I got another question anyway.
Come on up.
George Wallingford, where's Second Street? I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but when you purchase something, wouldn't you purchase the whole kit and caboodle?
Not necessarily.
No.
That's pretty good, I didn't even see your lips move. Damn. Go ahead, please.
Not always. Because again, you have to, we purchased what we had, we want to get a stage in here. And again, part of it's just usage. Now we realize the stage is a certain height, then we have.
Wouldn't it be a liability that if somebody fell off the milk crate down at brand new stage that we bought?
Well, I have utmost trust that
I'm just
whoever's
asking.
working on it,
Just asking.
who's ever setting that up, whether it's DPW or whomever's working on that, is gonna make sure they're safe.
Okay. A while ago, Mr. Gallo referenced transparency with the borough. The agenda that's on the website isn't the same as the one that was handed out tonight. Any particular reason about that?
Because something has come up that we need to discuss during closed session. And the only other amendment was
Zoning ordinance.
the zoning ordinance, because there was a number reference off.
And also communication.
But this agenda
Receive
is
and
on the
file, well,
website.
receive and file, you had Mike Lane's letter, and above that, you had the library recognizing Holy Courts.
That was on the original agenda.
Yeah. Not where it's at on this agenda.
I don't know if it was you.
Maybe item numbers.
No, they shifted it down from,
Right.
for approval to receive.
Yeah. Thank you.
But this agenda is online.
This one's online now. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lane?
Following the last meeting, and after we cleared up the developers agreement was available to the public, I got a copy of it. It's an excellent document. I want to compliment you on it. And what I look forward to seeing is that it applies to all the major projects in town. 25 East Front, Manor Village, Raritan Cove, et cetera. I don't think we have those in place yet. And so it's an outstanding document. You really need to have it prolificate to all the major developments
Thank you.
Now, the second thing, Councilman Good, when we were talking about the weed ordinance,
Yes,
that, we have other things in the town that control weeds, okay? And it triggered me to go back and look at our new zoning ordinance. And I shared this information with all members of the council, I just want to reiterate it, that the zoning ordinance defines a site triangle area for a driveway into a street. And that the plantings between the sidewalk and the curb, which would interfere with the site triangle, cannot exceed 30 inches over the height of the center line of the street, which says that those plants probably can't be over 24 feet high. And we have a lot of violations of that in town.
I assume you mean inches, not
Yes.
24 feet.
No, I'm sorry, 24 inches. That's my age, anything's possible.
I think Mike has
That's a
brought
really
all
tall
of them to our attention in the past week, too.
There's one on the corner of Warren and, Green Grove. There's like a tree right.
Yeah, we've been addressing them, I've told property maintenance to scope them out.
Yeah, I have brought to the attention of the borough administrator of the plants that violate street-to-street site triangles, which is the corner of Atlantic and Elizabeth and Church, streets I walk on. But in addition to those violations, if you have a driveway and your neighbor next to you has plants that are above about 24 inches high between the curb and the sidewalk, it's blocking your site triangle. And that's in the existing ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to come forward? Or motion to close the public?
Motion closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have something listed for closed session. I mean, before we close, but motion to close.
Are we taking action when we come back? No.
We're going to closed session pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12B7, which to discuss matters involving employment or appointment of a public officer or appointee, and also NJSA 10:4-12B8, which involves contract or litigation issues that may involve the borough. The council is not going to take action when we resume the meeting out of close. As soon as these items are no longer privileged or no longer falling under these two exceptions to the Open Public Meetings Act, any future action or discussion by the council will take place in public.
Make a motion going to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-minute recess motion.
Motion for 5-minute break?
Well, how are you making a motion to go? We're already enclosed.
Right.
Should have made it first.
I'm sorry.
Suck it up.
I don't have to go, it wasn't for me.